All right. Welcome everybody to the formal Underground Railroad Network to Freedom and Association for the Study of African American Life and History 2025 grant kickoff. On this webinar, we are giving an orientation to the Network to Freedom Grant Program for 2025, going over the criteria for applications and how to apply. At the end of the webinar, we will also be doing question and answer for anyone who is interested. Usually in our first round of question and answer, it's just like, is my program applicable to your grant? Is the thing I want to do applicable to your grant program? With that being said, I think we can get started. It's 12:01. Also, as a reminder, this webinar is going to be recorded so that all the guidance that we offer on this will be made available online through the Asalo website, which is going to be on the same landing page as all of the information about the grant. So anything that you miss will be recorded and made available, and you can go back and look at it. You're also welcome to contact me or anyone else in the program to find out more information. I wanted to start with doing some introductions for those of us who are on the call today from the Network to Freedom program. Let's see if it's going to let me. I'm Dan Ott. I am Grant Manager and Western Regions Coordinator for the Network to Freedom program. I am joined by my colleague, Winnie. You want to introduce yourself, Winnie?
Hello, I'm the Network to Freedom's Administrative Assistant, GIS Person, and Tech Support.
Thank you, Winnie. And then also in the room, we have Kamal McLaren, who's the Regional Program Manager for the National Capital Region and the Southeast. We also have our colleague Robin Krawitz, who's responsible for the Northeast. Not with us today, Barry Jurgensen, who's responsible for the Midwest, and our colleagues Rudy Biotegi, who's our VIS communications guy, and Daniel Calloway, who's our administrator. But we are all here to help you with your grant questions. We wanted to start by clarifying who is and is not eligible for this grant program. This program was created by Congress with specific funding that is set aside exclusively for current Network to Freedom members. That means that projects that are associated with currently designated Network to Freedom sites, programs, or facilities are the only eligible candidates for this grant program. There is one exception to that, which is that we do fund research and writing for new Network to Freedom site applications. If you are aware of a site and you want to work on doing research about a site associated with Underground Railroad and freedom seeking, you can use the grant program to provide funding for that effort, provided it results in a completed Network to Freedom nomination. Beyond that, we will move forward. This program is administered through a task agreement between the National Park Service, National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, and our good friends at the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. We have tried to streamline this entire experience for our grantees because we've gotten ASALA to host most of the grant making apparatus, which means that they host the grant making portal, they run the agreements, they administer the funds. We, the Network to Freedom staff, play the crucial role in providing oversight of the program, which means that we do the webinars, we also do the merit review in partnership with them of all the grants. We do the technical advisory support for all the grant projects, and we approve spending the money, but that goes to our third-party partner. And it is a mechanism that we have developed over a series of years that is much, much simpler to use for users than SAMS.gov and grant solutions. So it's something that we have developed that is simpler for our members to get access to federal funds through our program. So keep that in mind as you grapple with the system, that what we're going to describe is actually easier than the alternative, even though it may not seem like it. Our Network to Freedom grant program, as a bit of background, was created in 2002. That's when our collaboration started with Asala. This year, we are funding $500,000 in projects that are specifically going to support preservation or restoration of Network to Freedom listed buildings, interpretation and education projects associated with the Network to Freedom, additional historical research for current Network to Freedom members, and new site applications to become a Network to Freedom member. Our grant awards this year are available for $1,000 to $100,000. All of the applications will go through the grant portal system, which is hosted by Asala at asalapartners.org/apply. The portal opened on June 20th, and it will close to applications on August 18th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have an issue with the deadline and you're having problems with the portal, please send us an email with your attached materials and we will work with you to troubleshoot the problem if the deadline has expired, provided you do so before the expiration of the deadline. This year, we have two special emphasis areas. Our first special emphasis area is on historic preservation projects, specifically associated with buildings, landscapes, and structures. These are oriented towards construction and planning projects that seek to preserve or otherwise treat a historic landscape, building, or structure which is designated on the Network to Freedom as a site which is from the Underground Railroad era. These projects will be required to work with the National Park Service and local state historic preservation office to complete National Historic Preservation Act Section 106 compliance, which we do all the time. We also require that all of these projects meet the Secretary of Interior standards for treatment of historic properties, which are found online at Secretary of Interior standards for treatment of historic properties, technical preservation services. We are also, again, happy to help you navigate that process and to understand what that means. Essentially, it means that treatments to historic properties that are being funded by the federal government are going to be deemed historically appropriate for that property. The other thing is that we want to note is that structures, landscapes, and buildings that are not from the Underground Railroad era are not eligible for the bonus points that are associated with the special emphasis area, and artifacts in our archival collections are not eligible for the special emphasis area either. The other special emphasis area that I noted early on, we are always supportive of new Network to Freedom site designations, and this is a prioritization of new site listings which seek to recognize verifiable Underground Railroad stories within the Network to Freedom. We provide funds to support research, including travel, hours, stipends, this sort of thing, on freedom seeking, provided the project also includes submission of successful Network to Freedom site nomination. We do require that you, in the application, that you provide some sense that the site or story has verifiable documentation to begin with. In the past, we have funded people sort of blindly to go look for Underground Railroad evidence, and those have almost always resulted in negative findings. We wanted to support folks who have already found kernels of Underground Railroad stories to finance the continuation of those efforts and formal designation. As a special reminder about this, as with all Network to Freedom designations, we do require owner consent for a property to be listed. That means you can't go and list anything you want. You have to have owner co-signing and saying that they want this to happen and they want this designation to be associated with their property before the Network to Freedom will fund or even list any property anywhere. Now we're going to go through a long list of things that can be funded. As I said before, the goals of our program are preservation, interpretation, and education, and we're focused on things that have Underground Railroad associations. And you can start with things like the simple of markers and signs that identify sites as being in the Network to Freedom, interpretive markers, brochures, exhibits, websites, and videos, historical research in support of interpretive publications, oral history and documenting of oral traditions, education curricula, lesson plans and teacher workshops, cultural resource surveys, including archaeological surveys, preservation and restoration of historic building structures and landscapes, projects to enhance physical accessibility of sites and programs, including installations of ramps and lifts, National Register of Historic Places or National Historic Landmark documentation and nominations, workshops and public education programs, technical assistance in associated site and or landscape identification, preservation and stabilization of cultural artifacts, collections, and documents, research and writing for new site listings in the Network to Freedom. That's just some of the things that I think is illustrative of the larger what the program will fund. We will not fund a variety of things as well. We don't fund projects that are already underway. We don't fund purchase of historic sites, building structures, objects, or cultural artifacts. We don't provide operational funds or administrative salaries for people who are already doing a job to just sort of say, hey, here's extra $100,000 to support you doing the things you're already doing. We don't support equipment purchases. We do not support new construction as opposed to historic treatments of historic structures, with the exception of accessibility construction, which we do support. We don't fund listing religious properties on the Network to Freedom. When we do projects on Network to Freedom religious properties, they have to be specifically connected to the Underground Railroad, and the thing that's being connected cannot just be sort of because of religious history, which if you have a question about that, staff is happy to provide you with additional information and insight. And also that criteria has not changed ever. So it's not anything new for us, if anyone was wondering. Projects designed to raise funds. We don't do fundraising support. We don't support projects that don't have a direct connection and are not about Underground Railroad history. For example, a project to preserve a building but essentially the idea is if you have a 1970s building with a leaking roof and you have a Network to Freedom designated exhibit inside of your building, you cannot get Network to Freedom funds to work on your 1970s building. You can, however, get Network to Freedom funds to enhance your exhibit that is already Network to Freedom listed. So we try and clarify that we only support the work for the thing that is Network to Freedom designated, not sort of the supporting ancillary stuff. We also don't pay for food and refreshment of any sorts. And we do not pay for, and this is new from last year, so this is 2 years old, we no longer pay for recurring annual programs, events, or workshops because we had discovered that some of our partners were counting on that money coming through and making plans as if the money would come through and then it wouldn't. So we have decided that that is not a practice we are going to continue with. We will, however, support first-time annual programs, events, or workshops as seed money for a partner, a Network to Freedom designee, building out sustainability for a new project or symposium or something like that. We did want to include some of the basic requirements for our grant program. Number one is that grant-assisted preservation work must acknowledge NPS grant assistance throughout the duration of the project, including the cost of installing a project sign in the requested project budget, because one must be erected at the site. So if you're doing a preservation project, there has to be a sign that says this project is supported with National Park Service funds. Number two, for non-construction projects, NPS grant assistance must be acknowledged in any products resulting from the grant. We will provide, again, the text for these things, but essentially if you're making a website using Network to Freedom funds, it has to say on that website that the Network to Freedom supported creation of that website. The third one is that the Network to Freedom staff will be involved in monitoring and approving your expenses, interpretive projects, markers, websites, etc. NTF staff will be required, you will be required to get approval for all of your content by a Network to Freedom staff member in a draft phase. Additionally, all of your invoices that get submitted for reimbursement must be approved by NTF staff before they can be reimbursed. Also, grant recipients must ensure that all their projects are carried out in a timely and professional manner, and interim reporting schedules outlined in the grant agreement must be followed. Grant funds must be expended in a timely way in a manner as described in the grant agreement. We essentially, after the execution of the grant agreement, every single grant will be the same length of time, which will be between 14 and 15 months, depending on the date of execution, so that you will have, we refer to this as a year-long grant program, but we actually put a couple extra months on there just because of the timelines associated with trying to get all of our documents executed. But be aware that you are going to have to get this thing done essentially in a year, and that throughout that process, you will have to be interacting with the Network to Freedom Park staff, the Network to Freedom staff, and that all the things that you are seeking reimbursement for have to be approved by the park staff, either in a grant, either in your grant application or in some sort of documentation before the money is spent, which has been approved by Network to Freedom staff. In case there are changes, we do understand that there are project changes. Just be aware that we have to have those changes documented and approval of those changes documented as well. As you go through this application process, please be aware that there are some things we can help you with and some things we cannot help you with. We are happy to talk to you about questions about grant application format and details. We are happy to talk with you about solving website submission issues. We are also happy to listen to you talk through your project and to ask you questions and provide you with insight about how you might be able to further improve your project. The thing that we can't do is we cannot review your grant application for comment prior to submission, and we cannot tell you what to write. Frequently, people will act like the Network to Freedom is a very confusing grant application process, and they'll get frustrated with us, and they'll want us to tell them what to write, and we cannot do that. Because it would be unfair to all the other applicants. And so we're willing to help you to an extent to help provide you with the same sort of insight equally. Every single program applicant can get the same level of support from us, but we will not engage in pre-review, nor will we involve in actually writing your applications, which happens every year. Someone asks us to help write them, and we just won't do it. So just be informed of that. Finally, that gets us to how to apply. People who are familiar with this, for the last several years, we've been using a form on the ASALA website, asalapartners.org/apply. It essentially goes through a series of 9 pages of forms to fill out in order to apply for a Network to Freedom grant. It includes several attachments that you must include, including a commitment from the property owner that is responsible for the Network to Freedom listing that they support the project, a commitment from the organization CEO or whoever is responsible for the organization saying that they are committed to the project that is being submitted on their behalf. And then sort of a variety of other pages describing the organization's contact information, which is really straightforward, but also describing the project itself, offering budget justification, and sort of going through all of the criteria that are listed on the form. We want you to know that you can download and look at all of the pages of the form in advance, and we highly recommend you do that and that you write out your answers separately from the form, because as a snafu of the way in which we have sort of made this process more user-friendly, in one way it is not, which is that you have to complete your entire application in a single sitting. It will not save your form between sessions, so you have to sort of click through and be prepared to sort of populate the entire form as you go. So we are happy to, so that's something to be aware of. That is something to sort of keep track of. None of this stuff is really that challenging, but it does require narratives about what the project is and why the project has value, and the project budget justifications are really important parts of this, including a budget breakdown of how much money is going to be spent on what components. The more thought you put into it on the front end, the more successful your application will be, and your project will also be on the back end. So we highly encourage people to be very, very thoughtful in the application process and to really use it as an opportunity to think through project management. And also be aware that frequently those applicants that are most successful are the ones who have done the best job communicating a fully articulated vision of what their project is going to be and how it is going to serve the Network to Freedom and the general public. That being said, we did want to provide some insight into how these things get reviewed. All of the applications get reviewed by a panel made up of Network to Freedom staff and by folks at ASALA. Our members assign a numerical rating for all grant applications based on the elements of the application, including completeness, the demonstrated validity of the budget figures, and documentation of need. The score is combined with any bonus points. Again, this year's our historic preservation bonus points, as well as new site nominations, as well as, and this is one that we always give away, is anyone who's a first-time grant applicant gets an additional set of bonus points. And we then award based on the availability of funds, based on rank. So grant applications are ranked from best score to worst score, and we fund as many as we can until we're out of money at $500,000. For some sense of this, in 2024, we had $1.7 million in requests for $500,000, and we wound up funding 20 projects. In 2023, we had $1.9 million in requests, and we funded 13 projects. So they're depending on the viability of the project, it can wind up widely varying how many awards we give out total. I suspect this year, because preservation projects are more expensive, there will be fewer overall grants, which is the reason why that folks need to be particularly thorough in their documentation of their projects. But again, what we will do is we will wind up providing time and access to us just to answer any questions that people have. Those are also recorded and will also be available online, because we recognize that folks frequently do have very similar questions about what's required of the process. I did want to, again, sort of give you the overall summary here. Our grant application portal is open until August 18th, 2025. Our special emphasis and bonus categories, again, are preservation projects, new Network to Freedom site designations, and first-time Network to Freedom grant applicants. So folks who are new to the Network to Freedom designations get some bonus points for just putting in their first application. That being said, I think that is, and again, everything will wind up going through the Asala portal. Let me post that portal page for everyone, to everyone here. That's not right. Sorry, everyone. I don't know why it's not letting me copy and paste this web address. I'm writing it out long. There you go. And with that being said, we can open up for some questions and answers. I believe in this webinar format, people have to type their questions into the chat so that we can respond to them verbally, I believe. Oh, there's also a Q&A. Doris asks, is this for fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26? That's a confusing question, because this is actually using funds from fiscal year 24. So we're using the funds this year in 25. The projects will be awarded, and they will largely be completed during 2026, but ultimately due, I believe, March 31st of 2027. So that's the first thing to know for that one, Doris. Another question from Julie is, church in my city has primary extant paperwork for that Elijah Lovejoy commissioned as Presbyterian minister there. Long oral tradition, it was a underground railroad station when the German congregation moved there in the 1830s. Is this enough for verifiable documentation requirements? I would think that what we would want to see for that kind of a thing is some secondary sources that Elijah Lovejoy is a known ally of freedom seekers. I suspect he is. I don't know that he is. My colleagues may know better than I do that he is or is not. But you just want to see something that says, yes, we know that this guy is associated, and go from there to sort of build out the larger nomination. But we usually want to see a little bit more than the oral history component. Not that oral history can't be a substantial part of any nomination, but that we just need to see a little bit more, because we deal with so many properties that have had some connect that are alleged to have connection in local tradition and local lore and oral history to have connections. And then when we fund those projects, it's really a sort of a coin flip as to whether or not we can actually sort of figure it out and verify the oral histories beyond sort of living memory. So those are some things to be aware of. Any other questions? Local government and municipality owned sites are eligible for the Network to Freedom. We are in the process of actually wrapping up one that is owned by the city of San Antonio. And that nomination is being completed by the San Antonio African American Community Archives and Museum for a property that is owned by the city. So that is something that is both eligible for designation and eligible for grant. You do need the city to send you a letter that says they support the project. Thank you, Dolly. That's an excellent question. We will wind up communicating about our office hours, our additional office hours sometime soon. Anyway, we will get out more information about that. Are there any other questions at this time about the grant program? Let me just click through here and see if there's anything else. The dates for the project to happen will be Doris, will occur during 2026, and so they'll have to be done by March 31st of 2027. But they will largely occur in calendar year 2026. We suspect as well what will happen here. It will take us a little while to review applications, and then it will take us a while to get release of our application of our grants approved. So while we will intend to get all of these things approved in October, what happened last year is they all got approved in December, which is 2 more months than you would hope. But so we sort of build in the idea that there's going to be some extra time. If they wind up going out in October and we get agreements signed in October, optimistically, the projects would have to be done by the end of January 2027. So we usually give it 15 months or 14 months or so from the beginning, from whenever the agreement is actually signed awarding funds, because we recognize that lots of time can be lost in the bureaucratic administrative process, and we don't want to make that punitive for our partners. Good question, Doris. Hi, Michael. Sacramento County has many sites. How should we proceed in the grant program? The key is that you need to identify a key partner to participate. Well, you need to identify what the key story is and what the key location is that you want to get listed, and then sort of go out from there. The city of Sacramento is working on a nomination using the same sort of process for the Archie Lee escape site. So it's not an impossible thing to do. We just do need to make sure that we can that you have the owner permission and the particular story associated with that place in order to make for a viable application. Yes, Herbert, there is a phone number. We usually use email for the most part once you get a hold of a particular program manager. I can actually forward the slides so you can see those. These are all of the email addresses associated with our program. So depending on what region you are in, you can email any one of us. An email is the best way to set up a phone conversation. Most of us primarily work through email to set up either teleconference calls or to set up traditional phone calls or site visits, although we're not doing as many site visits as we used to right now. So anonymous attendee, what assurance is there that funds will be available and not cut by the feds? I don't really have a good answer for that. I would like to believe that once the federal government agrees to following through with the grant, that we are going to show up with that funding as we have promised. There's a variety of things that are outside of the program's control, and you should rest assured that the program itself did not, has done everything it can to make sure that we are making our partners whole through our grant program. as much as possible. And to this point have entirely succeeded. Daphne, would the grant support academic educational workshops? Yes. Cultural heritage workshops? Yes. If they are repeats of previous cultural heritage workshops, we will no longer be supporting them though. So the funds are intended to be seed money to sort of get a new sort of collaboration going. They are not intended to be ongoing funding year over year, as has happened in several instances in the past. Good question. Thank you, Daphne. Do we have any others? I think I think I've answered all of the questions that are currently in the chat for Q&A. Please feel free to ask a couple others if you've got them. And again, we will wind up posting additional information about our grant program and our grant Q&As on our website, through the Asala website, on Facebook, so that people can get access to them and participate. You're also welcome to contact any of us for additional information. I'll leave it open for a little bit longer here in case anyone has additional questions. Herbert, your project should be completed within 12 to 15 months after the grants are awarded. Depending on when it is done, you will always have more than 12 months from the time of award. It makes it a little bit tricky if you're planning on something that has to happen in October, because usually we cannot get the funds out by October. So we always recommend people to push them out so that you're anticipating that a project could probably get underway by January of 26. Maybe a little bit earlier, but probably January of 26. It's a good question. Yes, Jeffrey. NTF frequently does give additional time for construction projects. We recognize that weather can be a factor because of a lost construction season. We also recognize that the compliance process can take longer than anticipated. What is key about that is you need to be in open dialogue early and often with your regional manager, who's going to approve project changes, including your changes in deadlines as you get slowed down on construction projects. So we accommodate those changes which occur. We had one project that took closer to 2 years than 1 year a couple cycles ago because of compliance requirements. Just what happened. And we don't want that to be a reason, as indeed we don't want weather to be a reason that these projects can't get done and that our partners can't get funding from us. So we're pretty flexible around that. The goal is, though, is you should try and lay it out as a 1-year project. Or you should think of it as a 1-year project, but be aware that in your back pocket, keep in your back pocket that we will approve some changes as necessary. Good question, Jeffrey. Rena, do managers offer help on projects? I don't understand. The answer is, I don't understand the question. Once the project is underway, the manager, in some instances, often offers help. We are often trying to help our partners all the time by providing technical advisory support to help sort of ensure the best outcomes for a project. So we're always participating with our partners and making sure that projects come to fruition and have high degrees of success. So we do wind up participating in projects with successful applicants and grantees. And indeed, we do support everyone who's in the Network to Freedom, even if they don't have a grant, in trying to ensure their success. So in that way, we do help projects. Managers do not help write grant proposals, though. Good question, Rena. Anyone else can stay on for a couple more minutes. We still have plenty of time. I just want to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered as they have them. Otherwise, again, you can contact us at the Network to Freedom and we will answer your questions as well. Oh, another one. Cool, Rena. Yeah, apply for a grant. You are eligible to get one if your organization is in the Network to Freedom. So absolutely, put an application in and get a hold of us if you would like any any guidance on the grant process, and again, to talk through your project and what kind of things we're looking for in a grant. Cannot write the grant for you, but we do want to see our members succeed, and we want to see everyone succeed. So, yeah. Oh, Malone's Church in Madison, Maryland. How long ago was that designated? Is that a recent one? It feels like it's recent. We have so many listings in Maryland, and it's over 100, so it's a lot. They blur together a lot. 2 years.
At
All right.
least 3 rounds ago, Dan.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, yeah, please let us know. And we'll be happy to, if you've got questions, we'll be happy to answer your questions and provide support. Anyone else? Doris, what we will do is we will transcribe this webinar, and then it will wind up being put on the Asala Partners page. So when you're looking at information about how to apply, you will also see additional resources associated with supporting application processes. So that's where you will see it. It still will not come out yet for a couple of weeks because Winnie has to transcribe it. We make it 508 compliant so that it's an accessible video. But yeah, so it will be available through the Asala Partners page. A good question. Michael Harris says, thanks for coming out west and looking forward to officially rejoining the NTF family and telling our unique California journey to freedom. Yeah, of course, Michael, always interested in seeing more nominations out in California and doing more network freedom work there. And of course, Doris, we chat with you often, so you're always welcome. We'll give it another minute and see if we don't have any other questions, we will close it up. All right. Well, yeah. Do applicants to qualify have to be a designated freedom movement site? Herbert, if in order to get Network to Freedom grant funds, you do need to be a designated Network to Freedom site, with the exception of new research projects that result in the nomination of a new Network to Freedom site. So we support doing more additional scholarship and work to get new properties listed. Your nomination essentially would be, we have a project to nominate this site, and so we're just funding for that research and writing process. So those projects are always pretty small in dollar amounts relatively, and they have to be standalone projects. They cannot be like, oh, we have this Network to Freedom nomination, and then we have this much bigger other project as like a gateway to fund it or something like that. So it just has to be a standalone Network to Freedom nomination project that can be qualified to apply. I think these questions are very they're very confusing to people who are not part of the Network to Freedom. So I appreciate them greatly, because I know a lot of people who are inside of the Network to Freedom understand all this stuff and have seen a lot of it. And so it's just sort of a curiosity, and it's not quite straightforward how you interact with the grant program as a non-member. So it's got that very, very limited, narrow pathway, which we encourage. Seeing no more questions, I think we will sign off for the day. Again, please feel free to contact and follow up with us if you've got any questions. We're happy to help you navigate through the application. Again, they are all due on April 18th at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing what fantastic projects you put forward. And did I say the wrong number? August 18th is the due date. If I said the wrong, I got a reminder from Winnie. So we look forward to seeing what fantastic projects you put forward and working with you, as working with all Network to Freedom members to advance commemoration, preservation, and interpretation of resistance to slavery through escape and flight. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday week, and we look forward to being in touch with you again